Greetings, welcome back to CS133 Practical Programming with Python. We're on week 1, variables and inputs. This is lesson input, casting. So here we are going to learn how to cast today. Our objective is to introduce students to casting and how it's used to convert variable types. Remember, we learned about strings, we learned about integers, we learned that you cannot combine them together, but this is the way to fix that. So our success criteria: students will demonstrate understanding of casting by accepting user input and then doing math with the input and printing results. Now, why is that complicated? Because remember, all user input is a string and you can't do math with strings. So let's just learn the basics of how to do this, period. And we will font size this so you can see it. All right, let's look at this code. Input, what is your age? We know how that does, right? It prompts you, whatever you type here gets put here. So even if you put a number here, it is going to be a string. But now is this new code right here, int num. So just like input, just like print, the command is int, and then whatever the number, whatever the string is. Now, this would work. This would not work, right? So 5 would work. So let's go ahead and test this. So 34 minus, so I am going to go ahead and run this since I didn't change anything. Click 5, and then 5 is going to go here, and then it's going to go here, it's converted to an int, and then do math. And then promptly right after that, it's going to try it without it, which last lesson we just saw what happened, but let's go ahead and do it anyway. Enter. It does 34 minus 5 is num. That works. 29, and then it breaks, so it doesn't print anything after that. And again, unsplit operand, int and string cannot work. Now let's try something else real quick. Let's type in 5. Now, invalid literal int 5. Again, these are always not super intuitive, but if you can look at int 5, it's not an int. What we just did was this, 5. You can't turn that into an integer. We did, right before that, we did this. That worked. But you can't do this. So we're not going to go into error checking right now. When you write your programs, we'll just assume that users are going to enter the correct thing. So that is how you convert, right? Integer, we'll turn it num, and to change it to a string, which we'll see why you'd want to do that in a minute, it's just str. Again, to convert to an integer, it's int. To convert to a string, it's string, right? You type in whatever you're converting to in there. And again, if once you start programming, it makes a lot of sense, but I do see this a lot. I ask students, how do you convert to an integer? And they're like, str. Like, well, it is a string, but that's not how you convert it to an integer. So let's go ahead and look at a little bit more of why you kind of flop back and forth with this. So this happens quite a bit with this as well. So basically the same concept, but this time we've moved it to an integer. So instead of printing, just straight printing this result, we're going to go ahead and we're going to set it to a number, or a variable, right? So we have our variable age. We're setting it to whatever the user is, right? So if they say 18, then 18, 34 minus 18, 16, right? So this will be num of 16. However, if we just did this, this is now an integer, right? This is now an integer. So even though this was a string, we had to convert it to an integer so we could get this number, but now number is now an integer, and you can't concatenate a number and integer. Just like you can't add, so let's go ahead and stop and run this real quick with this new theory. What is your age? What did I say? 16, 18, whatever, it doesn't matter. It's going to break here, right? This works. It converts 18 over, and then it goes to do this, and now again, cannot concatenate straight. So this is probably one of the most straightforward. Cannot concatenate a string and integer. This is probably one of the most straightforward errors I've ever seen. Yeah, you can't, right? It can't do a string integer. This is integer, so that's why I had, and I showed you already, that str parentheses, and then whatever you're converting, whatever the number is, whatever you're converting, it's going to be a number. You put it inside of that. So now let's run this one more time. We'll try that 18. 18, enter. You are 16 years younger than I, right? I'm not really 34, but that is how this would work, right? You have someone's 34 minus whatever age the user put in, and that's how much younger that person is. So this is a great example of where you need to get their age, convert it so you can actually get a new number, and then you want to print that new number right there. So there's a lot of times that you can convert. Now I'm going to show you one more thing. There are times when you just go ahead and int parenthesis. This gets complicated because look, you got it. So basically I'm getting the input, and then as soon as I get the input, I am converting it to an integer, and then I'm setting it to age, which now age is an integer, right? I just converted an integer. So you could do that. You could do that if you wanted to. And what the usefulness of that is if you need to do another age equals, I don't know, 55 minus age, right? You don't have to do int around each of these because you already did it once. So pros and cons, you can just do it so it's already, this is an integer. Now, cognizant of if you wanted to do age here, if you do this, then it will break here. It'll work here and here without any extra, but it'll break here. So, again, just realize when you're converting stuff. Also note that if you try to do this, it doesn't actually do anything. It'll convert it at that very second, and that's it. Which is another thing to point out. We'll just delete this print thing for now. Is if you, I'm going to get rid of all the other ints for now. So I see this before. If I change it to an integer here, it's only changed right there. So therefore, this next time when you go to use it, it's going to break. So if I do 18 again, it worked here. There's no errors here, but as soon as I got down here, it's not. So again, do realize. Now I could do something like, and this would not be super useful per se, but I could do my age equals int age, and then I could do my age in these other two places as well. So a lot of different ways you could do this. Just depends on the program that you're running. But that's it. That's how you cast. There are other things, but we don't go over these too much in this class. But character is what it sounds like. It's just one single character, so it works very similar to a string. Float allows you to get decimals. But the same concept is if you want to cast to a character, you have to use char. If you want to cast to a float, you use float. So it's all the same concept. Whatever you're casting to is what you use to actually work it. All right, we're going to do our practice next, and then you'll get to do it by yourselves.